Nihilism. There is no goal, no answer to the question why. What is the significance of nihilism? That the highest values devalue themselves. Apellus and I are here to talk to you all today about modern issues. If you look at Twitter for 5 minutes, you will see that everybody is valuing something. Everybody's making an emotional value judgment about something. Take, for example, the most recent Twitter explosion about abortion. One person says, the mother's life is more valuable because I say so. Another person says, the child's life is more valuable because I say so. Make a bunch of value judgments, and there is no reason involved in that necessarily. And I think that is really a good jumping off point for us to discuss what exactly positive perspectives is, what it is we're trying to do, what it is we're trying to accomplish for the world and for the public forum, which the Greeks had their public forum, which was in the center of the town. We moderns have our public forum as well, and I think that forum has moved online in many ways, but it's a bunch of screaming infants sitting in the forum screaming their opinions. So how do we address that?
Way to insult everyone before getting too far into the video there, Vox.
Sorry, I sometimes I get too intense.
Spent too much time on Twitter this week, yeah.
Exactly. See, it's already gone after me too.
I think Twitter is an interesting case because in some ways people are more honest on there than they are in person. It's like comically so. You go and I don't know. I don't find people really expressing their primal feelings in real life. Probably thankfully so, right? Then
True.
As much as it's easy to find on Twitter. There's a few cases that definitely would prove that, but there's some that would disprove it too. So, the public forum nowadays, it is a bit odd. We communicate previously in text strings that were 120 characters. Yay, 240 now, right? But we do that, and we make videos which are typically individuals speaking and expressing their opinions in sort of an unfettered manner and often non-communicative. Now, of course, the caveat is there's a lot of good interviewers out there. So it's not everyone, but we're talking in generalities to introduce this, of course. And then there's all these sorts of little topical forum boards and sub-communities that are formed on the internet in various places, which really are formed off the premise of agreeing on the supremacy of individual topics. And then they have their nice little echo chamber, which was, interestingly, that tends to be what Twitter turns into as well. As well, famously, Jack has mentioned as much very recently. So,
True.
Yeah, so
every infant needs a nursery.
that is the forum of the modern world that we are perhaps aggressively putting our voice forward into.
Indeed. Specifically, I think the issue to be addressed is the issue of what tools are we trying to give the public with which they can approach their discourse better. And I think one of the tools that we've previously delineated is reason. Looking at the abortion issue, if you use reason, you would come to the conclusion that the life of the mother is valuable and the life of the child is valuable. Aside from all of the stuff, at what point does life begin and all of that? At whatever point life begins, life is valuable. So we'll just completely brush that aside. So positive perspectives, I think we seek to give people the tools of reason. And one of those is logic, which you are very well versed with. And I think that's something you could probably speak to better than me. How exactly does logic help people interpret their world?
Mm-hmm. Well, as you know, the first rule of logic is that something cannot both exist and not exist simultaneously. It's like you can't both be and not be. that is important because in and of itself, or I guess, yeah, if you evaluate that in the light of postmodernism, um, you tend to get confused. I'm not really sure what postmodernists do with the first rule of logic because so often there's this interpretive level that occurs in postmodernism where something can be true to me but not true to you, or something can be true in one day and then not true the next. And um, as a tool for reason, like you mentioned, we really should be using this really basic analysis tool, analysis rule, to determine whether or not something is real, whether or not something is true. If it goes into these categories of it's true in this case and not in this case, well, it's probably not really true. You have to evaluate
Mhm.
things with some sort of consistency and coherence, and that's what this first rule of logic, I think, at least for me, provides.
No.
Even
And
then,
how
I say at least for me, like yeah, as if it applies differently for other people. I mean,
we've been
we've
influenced
adopted
by
the language, yeah.
this wasteland of thought, and I think we really seek to be a stream of water in a wasteland of thought, unhinged thought. If you have a tree and the roots are at the bottom of that tree, if you will, call it the first cause. When you cut that first cause out, and those of our listeners who are erudite will know whom I'm referencing. When you cut that first cause out, all of the other tree, the trunk, the branches, all this part, uh, all the stuff that has to do with thought, it floats around in the wind. There's nothing. That's Twitter, Facebook to some degree. The news just sounds like that. So I guess my question for you, Apellus, would be how can you apply logic to situations in the world? How can you use it? And how do we give that to people?
Mm, yeah. Well, we want to provide um, analysis of things, which does that. But I guess that's something that everyone does from their own perspective. So uh, maybe I'm jumping into it a little too quickly here, but we acknowledge that perspectives exist when you provide commentary on anything, provide an analysis of anything. Um, you can see that often you can unfortunately see that coming through in the news when it should be reporting, exactly what happened, exactly how things went. You often see this perspective tainting and tinting the events. We want to acknowledge that up front and say, well, we're not trying to give a perspective, but then we
Hmm.
want to come around and say, oh, we're giving a positive perspective, an opinion which has a good outlook towards the future, an opinion which, if it were true, if it were to come true and come to pass, that things would actually be better than worse. It's this optimistic standpoint that is really important. Now, I didn't exactly answer your question, how we use logic. Uh,
No.
it's extremely important that we don't forsake facts in giving our perspective. I think that that's how we would employ logic most directly, is
Hmm.
that we do take things for exactly what they are. And if something is grim, we take it as being grim. If something is bad, we acknowledge it as being bad. It's not that we're, happy, happy, happy optimists. It's that,
No.
yeah, we absolutely will hold the truth of the matter in the foremost of the discussion. And that's, yeah, fundamentally logical.
Absolutely. And going a little bit back to a previous topic, I think addresses nihilism in that nihilism is the negation of all values. If you return values to the public sphere, then all of a sudden you have a way for people to agree. If people agree that humans have an ability to think clearly, and that there is some thinking that is not clear, some thinking that is clear, some thinking that is bad thinking, some thinking that is good thinking. Just in the same way, we've inherited postmodern terms like that applies for me. Our hope, I think, is that people will eventually be able to inherit our jargon, which is really an interesting thought.
Yeah,
Like
what
what
you're saying is that people can have beliefs, real beliefs on things, and then measure those beliefs and battle those beliefs against other people's beliefs. Isn't that kind of what you're getting at?
in that that's an okay thing, and it's possible to do that a positive way.
Hmm. Yeah, that's
So,
certainly certainly lost in much of the modern forum.
yeah,
Um,
as you said, it's an echo chamber. People
yeah, it tends to be.
scream their beliefs from the rooftops, or you go on Fox News and you listen to the five argue it out. Nobody addresses another person's point. Nobody listens. Nobody tries to
Well,
intellectually grapple. I mean, there
TV
are people who
spots
do
are
it.
pretty hard
I
because,
mean,
you know, they have 90-second segments. So, of course, yeah, they're not going to get anywhere in that format.
absolutely. And Twitter can't either because, it's 240 characters. So uh, that might be a good jumping off point for us to discuss the format of positive perspectives since
Yeah.
we're talking about some bad formats.
Well, they have flaws. And I think every format is suited to a particular sort of thing. Of course, you know, Twitter is probably best suited to status updates, right? What you're doing right now. And that's works perfectly fine. If you know, for short text, you say, "Oh, I'm, you know, doing this or I'm doing that. I'm eating even." So that's nice being able to know what your friends are up to and what they're doing. But it's not so nice when you encounter someone who you don't know, who you have no context of conversation with. You probably don't agree on definitions of terms and goodness knows what else. And then you disagree on things. And you disagree emotionally and passionately. Where's this conversation going to go if you can only use 240 characters? Like you're setting this up for failure, really. All of these things are just grouping up together to make sure that you won't agree on anything. No one's going to change anyone's minds. Nothing positive is going to come out of these sorts of interactions. But yet,
Hmm.
what's weird, what's really strange, and I like that you brought up Twitter, people want these interactions with random people. People want to engage other people with thoughts and ideas. And, like, why else would this be going on Twitter? Why would this be a predominant behavior that we see all the time? And not just Twitter, but Facebook too. We engage with one another in these debate sorts of discussions, but the formats are not very good at allowing it. So yeah, positive perspectives is of course adopting a much more long form approach to these sorts of discussions. And then we're also adopting approaches which are extremely clear and easy to understand. I believe in many of our deeper conversations, we'll be starting with definitions. We'll be starting from the ground up um,
Hmm.
on terms, even, so that everyone, regardless of their background, regardless of whether or not you've engaged with any of these sorts of ideas previously or not, people can understand this.
No. And inherent in everything you just said is this grounding framework of logic and reason, starting with definitions. I would lose my mind if I were to get on the TV, watch CNN, MSNBC, anything, and see people start with definitions. Now, as you said, they can't because of their format. But let's be real. If higher ups who have all the money somewhere in some office decided they wanted to dedicate themselves to real truth, to seeking truth, and allowing their format to go towards that, then they could. They absolutely could, but they don't want to do that because that's not where the money is. Uh, so it's really amazing to start with definitions and build from there, and it's possible to get some agreement, as we've seen. Uh, how does a book club work into this? Do you think?
Yeah, so this whole positive perspectives idea started about what was it, 10 months ago, I believe, and we got to talking about this idea of reading through old texts as a group, as a book club, and analyzing them. And the idea kind of grew and formed. We wanted to address things from the original texts. We wanted to address ideas from their true authors in some ways. So this book club idea grew, and for a while we called it thought, or the thought of humans. Like we wanted to seek out and evaluate all these different things that humans have thought. So what this has really enabled us to do is, of course, grow our thinking and understanding of philosophies and histories and religions and all of that. But beyond that, it's gotten us all on the same page on things. It's gotten us all to really, um, well, because we're discussing these thoughts together, we can do a bit of jousting with one another. We can really analyze and work out different perspectives on the same exact texts, and that's allowed us to grow one another in our understandings, and really, it is strange how we get on the same page on things, even though so often
Yeah.
we're discussing or debating differences in opinions.
Yeah. And a lot of the reason for that, well, maybe not the reason, but part of the issue is that humans have been talking about the same things for centuries,
Yeah.
possibly even since the beginning of time. They've been thinking about the same things. The more we've read, the more we've seen that there really is nothing new under the sun.
Mm-hmm. Well, and
Rousseau
that's
is talking about the same issues as Heraclitus,
mm-hmm.
just in a different way. Uh, and it's very interesting to see the unified line of thought
Yeah.
between all of those.
That's why we have the format of the book club. What it is, we select one kind of older text. I believe the cutoff is 500 A.D. now.
I believe so.
Yeah,
Yes.
so we select one text before 500 AD and one text after 500 AD each month, and we read them in concurrency. What this does, or our hypothesis on what this would do, was that we would be able to analyze differences or progressions in thoughts, or concurrencies and similarities in thoughts from very disparate time frames. And we've definitely seen well, what I would say is a lot more concurrencies than progressions. Now, that might be because of the text we chose. I think next month is going to be quite the progression, but
Hmm.
it's a really interesting analytical tool because we are starting from some premise that humans have similar thoughts or humans think similarly, regardless of their culture
Hmm.
and time frame.
And what's so funny is you live in the framework of thought and you're almost not aware of it, right? Like if anybody
Oh yeah,
were to grow up on a deserted island and not know anything about what thought was, and then they were told one day, hey, you think, you have an ability to solve problems, have an ability to consider your world, then all of a sudden it's the cave allegory all over again. They've been brought up from the depths of dark space to the light of the heavens, and they see all of a sudden that there is a way that is almost very spiritual, very deep, that their brain can be trained to use a framework and apply it to the world. And when you use that framework, things start making sense.
yeah,
So I would say positive perspectives is very much against the abolition of thought hierarchy and thought frameworks. We're not going to say all thoughts are held equal and all thoughts are good because they're thoughts,
oh of course,
but giving people the framework. We're not going to pull any punches necessarily, but if you give people the framework, they tend to make sense of it themselves. At least that's the hypothesis.
yeah, yeah. Well, I know we were trying to discuss a little bit about what positive perspectives is about. I mentioned that we would have different formats and longer form discussion formats, and we mentioned that there's a book club and that we've been participating in that. Um, Obviously, we have this YouTube channel now for long form discussions, of course, and unscripted conversations. I think we're going to be doing a lot of, but also deeper um, research based videos, maybe some other stuff as well. Probably the book club recordings will be posted here. And then we
Mm-hmm.
also have the website positiveperspectives.net, which is it's effectively a blog right now where each of us has a themed series of posts, and we're just going through different things. The blog is especially interesting because we're engaging with fiction and literature um, in ways that most blogs don't. I guess
Absolutely.
I'm actively pursuing um, this positive perspective idea through the format of writing a fictional, like literally a sci-fi novel. And of course, there will be deeper, interesting points in this novel. Hopefully, I'm not too um, too overt or too subversive a writer to achieve that, but we'll see.
No. Yeah, it's been very interesting reading it so far. It brings up a lot of interesting topics: AI, sentient AI, deep, deep thought, um, how
Yeah.
that might come about. Really, a lot of very pertinent, relevant modern issues that get you thinking. Very thought provoking stuff.
Well, thank you.
And and I find that it makes you wonder: is it good that technology's progressed so far? Anybody's seen the movie Transcendence, then you'll start getting an idea of, oh, these people are crazy radicals. No, we're just positive perspectives, just provoking thought. Uh, I guess since you talked about yours, I should talk about mine as
Sure,
well.
sure.
So far, the the writings of Vox Veritas have taken on a philosophical Socratic dialogue, in which the preacher dialogues with the learned one, who is a farmer, about time. And they begin talking about ethics in relation to time. Something I realized a while back is that ethics is entirely inseparable from time. Every philosopher who's talked about ethics has assumed that you have time to do a good or a bad action. And I don't want to give away too much, but uh, it's going to be interesting. It's been interesting for me writing it. And I think that between all of the writings on the site, between Apellus's writings and soon to be the writings of Eleazar and Jack, we hold the English language in high regard. Uh, Not the banal, uh, truncated English of the modern world. We really hope to, in a sense, one of my personal hopes is to revive the English language.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that it needs saving. Um,
Yeah.
I don't want to get nationalist, but that's a whole nother thing.
Well, it's not really just the English language. It's having meaning and purpose in speech or language in general. Like that's what we're going after here.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, where can our listeners find out more about our work? If you want to reiterate that, maybe.
Yeah, of course, positiveperspectives.net. That's just, one word, positiveperspectives.net. Um, it's got links to all the different medias right there on the site, as well as, of course, the blog and each of the authors. So definitely visit us there if you'd like to learn more.
Absolutely. All right, folks, this has been the first edition of Positive Perspectives, Apellus and Vox speaking and asking you to stay positive.